Hey everyone, this is Dan Kamenstein. I'm going to spend a couple minutes going over the answers to the second lab quiz. So we spent most of the time during this lab talking about gallbladder and aorta. And the questions on the quiz were asking you to take the information you already had from the lab itself and then apply it in some new scenarios. So the first quiz question was really just uploading all your images with measurements. And in the second question, I asked you to circle the measurement that you would expect to be abnormal if Mr. Brookstone was found to have a pancreatic head mass. So if you remember from your lab, you should have had measurements of the aorta, the common bile duct, and the gallbladder wall. And between all of those measurements, the one that you would expect to be abnormal if he has a pancreatic head mass that's obstructing bile flow into the intestines would be a dilated common bile duct. So here you see a normal common bile duct measurement and a circle around the common bile duct. You could have also circled the measurement itself, but just so long as you identify that it was the common bile duct that would most likely be dilated in this CT finding. In the second question, Mr. Brookstone has signs of mesenteric ischemia, and I asked you to take one of your images and draw a line where you'd expect to find a dissection flap. So as we talked about in lab, aortic dissections can often cause decreased blood flow, especially to vital structures such as the kidneys or the intestines. So in this case, you see a line drawn on the long axis image of the aorta, and we can see a line drawn here, and that dissection flap is now in the area of the SMA. And if we cut off blood flow to the SMA, that would decrease blood flow to the intestines, and that could lead to mesenteric ischemia. So I wanted you to draw a dissection flap in the long axis image of the aorta. And we went over kind of the pathophysiology of that during my lecture in lab. In question 4, Mr. Brookstone is found to be negative for aortic dissection, but unfortunately has a 6 centimeter distal abdominal aortic aneurysm. And what I wanted you to do in this case is draw a circle around the aorta on your distal image. So this was the image just above the bifurcation. Draw a circle around it that's approximately 6 centimeters in diameter. So here you can see I drew a circle around the aorta. This circle is approximately 6 centimeters in diameter. Now I wanted you to remember that the hash marks on the side of your image give you an estimation of distance. So each of these hash marks is 1 centimeter in distance. And so if we estimate the size of this circle that I drew, we can say we start here, and I can estimate 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, and if I draw across here, you can see that I'm about 6 centimeters in diameter. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just you recognizing that these hash marks actually give you distance measurement. So if we go back to our last image, we see here, each of these hash marks, 1 centimeter, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And almost every ultrasound will have these hash marks on the side, giving you ability to estimate distances in an image, even if you don't measure. So I just wanted you to estimate again what a 6 centimeter AAA would look like. And you could have put the circle up a little higher or a little bit lower as long as it's circled around the aorta. Now the fifth question, I asked you to use your knowledge of anatomic relationships to estimate the location of the renal arteries. Now, if the renal arteries are involved in a AAA, it makes the repair much more complicated because the stent now has to transverse the renal arteries and has the potential to cut off blood supply to the kidneys. So I gave you this image to begin with, and what I wanted you to realize from this image is that you know the branches of the aorta. So we know that the celiac axis comes off first, and then the SMA is the second branch. But I was hoping that you would be able to see that the renal arteries come off very close to where the SMA comes off. So if you look at this image, here's the SMA and here are the renal arteries. So if we know where the SMA is, we can estimate where the renal arteries are. And you had an image where you could see the SMA very clearly in short axis. And remember, I asked you specifically in this quiz question to upload one of your short axis images. So here we have a short axis image where we see the SMA coming off. Here's the aorta. Here's the spine, here's the IVC. So if we know the SMA is here, we could estimate that the renal arteries are going to come off somewhere right below where the SMA comes off. So I just wanted you to draw some arrows on either side of the aorta at the level of where you can see the SMA in your short axis image. So if you would put your first image before the SMA comes off in the proximal aorta, that might be a little bit too high. Or if you put your distal aorta image that might be where that might be too low for the renal arteries. But if we know where the SMA is, and we can see the SMA in the image quite clearly, we know the renal arteries should be somewhere coming off the aorta right around there. So that's what I wanted for that fifth image. This was, again, a little bit of application and then also a little bit of pathophysiology combined. So those are the answers to the 5 quiz questions. Hopefully you found this helpful, and we look forward to seeing you in the next lab.